Hi there, everyone. My name's Emma Heatherington, and I write commercial fiction for HarperCollins. I'm from Donaghmore, County Tyrone, where I live in a very busy household, so I'll apologise in advance if we've any interruptions, but I'm hoping to chat to you today about my writing career so far and what I'm up to at the minute. Huge thanks, first of all, to Peter at Libraries NI for inviting me to be part of this video selection where local authors get a chance to tell you what we're up to. So looking back, I suppose one of the most common questions I'm asked is, when did I know I was going to be a writer, or how did I know I was going to be a writer? And it's only when, I suppose, I'm asked that and I look back that I can see that there was definitely something there from a very, very young age. I was a bit of a Matilda growing up, I suppose, like a little bookworm. I absolutely adored reading, and I think a lot of writers come from a background of loving reading, so that's a good place to start. I remember the excitement of the library van coming to school, and I was always the first one with my hand up to get going out and choosing the new books. And I actually learned to read before I started primary one, which is something that I can credit to my late mother, who I was her firstborn, so I don't think she did the rest. Same for the rest of my siblings. So I suppose having me at home all to herself, she had that wee bit of time and she spent it wisely, and she introduced me to a love of reading. I've since discovered in recent years that she also had a great passion for writing too, after we found some of her work in the attic. So that was nice to see that again. Maybe I inherited that from her in some way, which is a lovely thought after having lost her so young. So a great love of reading was instilled to me as a child, and my favourite books back then, I've already mentioned Matilda. Well, Roald Dahl was a huge influence on me as a reader and a writer, and my favourite books as a child were definitely his collection, especially Fantastic Mr. Fox and Danny, Champion of the World. They would definitely stand out. Moving through teenage years, I remember devouring all the Sweet Valley High books that I got passed on from my cousins. I absolutely loved those books, and again that kept me interested in reading as a young teenager. I remember at school, in the upper part of secondary school, there was a bit of a craze for all the Irish writers. So again, people like Patricia Scanlon and her City Girl collection, we all passed those around and enjoyed them. Maeve Binchy, of course. And again, I remember my mother giving me Light a Penny Candle by Maeve Binchy, and that was a great new phase of reading for me. I went on to read The Last Lake and The Lilac Bus and Circle of Friends and all those classics that we now remember Maeve for. So Irish writers definitely, and also going into my local library branch in Dungannon, back then I used to love going to the Irish women's fiction section and just getting to know all the names of the writers and building on my variety, I suppose, of books that I would read by them. So by the time I hit my 20s and I was at university studying a degree in communication, advertising and marketing, which again had a writing element to it. Looking back, PR was the job that I went into after university, and that does involve a lot of writing and creativity. So I was getting to use some of that passion through that. But when I look back now, I can see that I was already making up stories, even though I probably didn't know I was doing it. I remember making up my own version of playground rhymes in primary school and teaching them to my friends. And I wrote my first song when I was 11. I fancied myself as a bit of a pop star. I can still remember it, but I won't sing it for you now. I won't put you through that. So I used to have a wee synthesizer, and I would write my songs in my bedroom every Sunday afternoon, and I built up a little collection of those. Then I moved on to write my first musical, which I remember Mummy saying to me as she sat by the fireplace with my baby sister in her arms, that I would need to maybe look at the plot a wee bit more, and that was her very constructive criticism. But it had loads of great songs in there by Bananarama and Michael Jackson and the likes of it, so I had great fun putting that together. And I even did assemble my own cast under what is now the Bardic Theatre stage here in our home village in Donaghmore. So I had great aspirations, not only to write my own musical theatre pieces, but also and plays, but also to direct them too. So it was definitely there from a very young age. But as I said, I moved into a career in PR, and I always still kept a good eye on what was going on in the Irish fiction world, in particular women's fiction. And it was a few years later, when I was a busy mum of 3 young children, that my aunt Kathleen, who's my mum's sister, and my godmother, who is also a really, really keen writer herself, and she, I remember her waving this magazine, this copy of Woman's Way magazine, to me one day in great excitement, and she told me that there was a short story competition, and that we both should enter, just for a bit of crack, for something to do. And so the theme of it was summer loving, and off we set, separately of course, to give this a go. I think it was 2,000 words was the limit, and she wrote hers and I wrote mine, and we met up at her house then to compare notes, and we read each other's stories and give each other a bit of feedback, and of course had a few glasses of wine, any excuse. And it was great fun. And off we went to the post office and posted the 2 envelopes at the same time, and there was prayers said and everything. But I went back into my job the next day, and for the next few weeks I was buying the magazine every week to see who was going to win this very coveted short story competition, which was being judged by Sarah Webb. So the weeks passed and the winner still hadn't been announced, and I think I was absolutely tormenting my work colleague who shared an office with me at the time so badly that she just said to me, look, why don't you just ring them and ask them when will they be announcing the winner, and put yourself out of your misery. So took a bit of courage to do that, but I did. I lifted the phone and I rang their Dublin office and I asked, and I was told yes, the winner had been selected and informed, and as did the 10 runners-up. So she wished me well. The lady on the phone was very nice. She wished me well and told me to keep up the writing and thanked me for entering. And then she just asked me what my name was before I put the phone down, and I told her, and there was a long pause, and she said, did you not get our letter? And I said no. And she said, you're the winner of the competition, and the reason why we haven't published it yet was because we were waiting to hear back from you. So I went from being extremely disappointed to on a complete high and shock and surprise, and I was over the moon to have won this competition. The prize, I remember, was to have my story published in the magazine, and then to have a lovely weekend in Inchydoney Resort in County Cork, which was magnificent. So that gave me a great boost of confidence, and I set off then to try and write something, I suppose you could say, a bit longer. My early attempts were atrocious, as you can imagine, but again I had set goals in my head, and I really did try and convince myself that I could do this if I just put enough time and energy into it. So, as I say, being a young mum of 3 at the time and working full time 9 to 5, I had to sacrifice some just of the usual evening routine, that whereby instead of sitting in front of the TV for a few hours when the kids were in bed, I would take myself off with my laptop and try and pull some ideas for stories together. And it paid off in the end. I ended up, I was offered a book deal by a very small publishing house in Dublin called Daughter Books, and Marisa there, she published that first book, which was called Crazy for You, back in 2007, and it was a real rush to see the book hit the shelves in Easton. We had a great book launch for it at the time, and it was a big celebration. So I moved on from there to Poolbeg, who again I was very au fait with. I had grown up with reading Poolbeg writers, and here I was being published by them. So I wrote 6 books for them, which were all published in the island of Ireland, and I was still working at the time in my full-time job. But my big dream was still to just go that wee bit further and be published across the UK, maybe further afield, maybe even translation deals. That was always my dream. And I just kept at it, and I sacrificed a lot. I took a career break, and financially, took a good hit. I left a very secure job, um, and I got stuck into just trying to aim a little bit higher. So fast forward to now, and I'm delighted to be signed by Harper Fiction in the UK. My latest book, Secrets in the Snow, which, as you can see, is very conveniently placed behind me here, is my latest release, and it's done really, really well. I've been contacted by so many wonderful readers who have enjoyed it lately, which is always lovely, lovely to hear. And I'm working away on my next book for 2022, and in April this year, The Promise will be released in Ireland, and then followed by a UK date in October. So lots going on and lots to be kept busy with. So it's been quite a journey so far. I've absolutely loved learning what I have. I think as a writer, I'm always learning. I'm using all of my life experiences in subtle ways to come up with ideas for stories. And again, that's a question that's often asked: where do we get our ideas from as writers? And I take a lot of them from my own life experience, but I suppose quite subtly use the themes in the stories that I come up with. I would describe my books as life-affirming fiction. Probably the earlier books were more romantic comedy, but since 2017, since signing with HarperCollins, I've moved on to more emotionally driven stories of real life issues that affect us all. So, for example, The Legacy of Lucy Hart, which came out in 2017, it dealt with the theme of organ donation, and it was definitely the book that changed my career and changed my whole approach to what genre I fine-tuned my genre after that, because I could see the great feedback that I was getting from readers who had been touched by that particular story, people whose attitudes towards organ donation changed after they read it, people who went and signed up to be organ donors. I got messages from people in America who perhaps had lost a loved one and had donated their organs, and took great comfort in hearing the story of Maggie and her connection with the little girl Lucy who saved her life. So it was a very emotional journey, that, and it was inspired by my cousin Kieran, who himself was a recipient of an organ when he was just a baby, and his desire to say thank you to his organ donor's family. With a lovely happy ending to Kieran's real life story, and that the book actually brought him in touch with that particular family, and we got to meet them, and he got to say his thank you. So again, that book will always be very, very special to me, and it was very much inspired by his desire, like I say, to thank his donor family. So I get ideas from lots and lots of people, lots of places. A Part of Me and You was the next book in that range, and it was inspired by, I suppose, the theme of motherhood and bereavement. As I mentioned there very briefly before, we lost our own mother very, very young, and it definitely changes you as a person in so many ways. And it's something, I think, if you lose a parent as a child, you carry it into adulthood with you. And especially when I became a mother myself, I realised just how huge it was to not have her to lean on, or to ask questions, or to learn from. So I took that theme and used it in the book A Part of Me and You. Some people have said they find it particularly difficult to read, but it's a very uplifting book. And again, the themes have resonated with many readers, which I'm always delighted to hear from. A Miracle on Hope Street was the next book, and it dealt with the theme of loneliness. And of course, all loneliness comes in all shapes and forms. It's not just your typical idea of someone who's lonely. There are all sorts of people out there who, especially in these times, need some kindness, or someone just to talk to on the end of the phone, or just to know that there's always someone there for them. So that book was set at Christmas, and again, some lovely messages from readers to say that it maybe had changed their attitudes in a certain way, or made them go and look someone up, or look out for a neighbour. So I've kind of carried that aim, I suppose you could say, to write books that make people think, and books are stories that will stay with the reader after they've turned the last page. So it's a great compliment to hear that sometimes that has actually worked. Then we had Rewrite the Stars, which was last year, and it was all about fate and how much of our lives are actually planned out for us and how much we can control and change the path that we're supposed to be on. That was a very fun book, even though the subject matters again were quite real and serious in parts. It had its own very own song, which was written by a Belfast singer-songwriter, Gareth Dunlop, who I'm a huge fan of. I was absolutely thrilled to work with Gareth. There's a scene in the book where one of the characters is a very famous singer, and instead of just making up lyrics for him to be quoted in the book, Gareth unbelievably wrote the most beautiful song. It's called You by Gareth Dunlop, if you want to look it up, and the book is Rewrite the Stars. So again, that brought me in a whole new audience, and it's great when you get to work with other writers, because writing can be quite a lonely business in itself, or you spend a lot of time in your own head, you spend a lot of time thinking, you spend a lot of time with the laptop, and to be able to work with Gareth on that was great honour, and that song and book will always be very special for that. And that takes us right up to the present day, Secrets in the Snow, which was just out recently, and I dedicated this book to my late Aunt Deirdre, who was kind of like a second mother to me, especially again after my kids were born. She died 10 years ago, and she left a great impression on us all. She was just full of crack, full of one-liners. I could nearly write a book quoting all the things that she used to say. So I felt it very appropriate to mark her 10th anniversary by creating a character called Mabel Murphy. And I think everyone needs a Mabel Murphy in their lives. And again, readers have come back to me and said the same thing, that they really enjoyed the character of Mabel and they would love a Mabel living next door to them. So it's a love story. It's set over 4 seasons. It's not necessarily a Christmas book, but as you can see, it's got a very wintry cover. But you can read it at any time of the year. And it's a very heartwarming story. It's will they, won't they get together, about a couple called Roisin and Aidan, and it starts after Mabel passes away and she's working her magic from up above, and she's trying to get these 2 people who she loved to get together. So again, great response and lovely readers getting in touch with that. That book was also published in Canada, and it's opened again a whole new world of readers, and I'm always really excited to start something new. And at the minute I'm working on the 2022 book, which doesn't have a title yet, but again, one of the questions I'm asked is, does writing energize you or exhaust you? And I definitely think, for me personally, it's something that energizes me. I find it to be a real saviour, especially during lockdown. I can totally escape into my own stories when the world is, such a worrying place at the minute. It takes me away from all that. I can just drift away into a different world where I'm creating the characters and bringing them in all these different introducing them to different people, bring them down different pathways. So it's definitely something that energizes me. I've also found writing very, very therapeutic. And like I said, to go back to childhood, it really, like, some of my loveliest memories are going to the library. And I've also brought my own children to the library as young kids as well, and we've lovely memories of that, of taking them and letting them choose their books and bring them home. I think libraries are so important for all of us, and they're a great place just to chill out and reflect and to browse and to bring yourself into all sorts of magical worlds. We can't travel at the moment, but we can certainly lose ourselves in a good book. So I hope that's given you a bit of an insight into my writing journey so far and where I am now. As I said, The Promise will be out in April. It's getting an Irish release first on the 15th of April, and then it will be out in October all across the UK and hopefully further afield as well. Thank you so much for listening. I'm on all the usual social networks, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. If you do read my books and you want to send me a message, please do. I always get back and love to hear from readers. So thanks again to Peter and to Libraries NI for having me, and I'll chat again to you hopefully very soon.